So when he's speaking at Areopagus, Mars Hill, what is he saying? He says, we are his offspring. It's one of your own poets say this, right? Like, we are his offspring. He's like, listen, he's determined these things so that people would seek him and find him because he's not far from any of us.
You know what's wild? That very verse, Acts 17:26, which we're unpacking as A, God's intentionality around ethnicity, culture, race, experience. And B, we're unpacking as a reason for unity with diversity, right? Segregationists use that very same passage to argue for segregation because they were saying, well, if God set particular times and places for different people, then we are not going to upset God's plan. God himself, and this is, I'm quoting some of them, God himself is the original segregationist, which is like, I want to vomit just saying those words, but that's how they twisted it and used it specifically in an anti-Black context, which again, comes back to this question: does God care about my Blackness? Yes.
So here's this is a perfect example when people ask, am I Black first or am I Christian first? Can I give you some of our philosophy of how we navigate this? So number one, I always tell people, I do not accept the premise of that question because God does not intend for us to live disembodied lives. Mm-hmm. God does not intend for us to live in our spirits alone, but disregarding our bodies. God intends for us not just to be redeemed in our souls and to have our spirits purified, but also to have our bodies as well be representations of his goodness in the earth. So that's number one, right? So we don't accept the premise of that question. And here's the thing I think is very important for Black Christians to understand. You don't have to accept the premise of these questions.
That's huge. That's it.
Like these questions, if you are asking them, oftentimes reveal something within you that you have to navigate and figure out. But if people are saying, oh, you're being too Black, you know, you're too Black and you should be Christian first, I don't have to accept the premise of that statement. Because what that assumes is the way that I show up and the way in which God has given me certain things that I care about and certain ways in which I express has now become something that is at odds with his redemptive plan. Mm. And so now you have to prove that biblically, and you can't, right? You have to prove that biblically. So number one, we don't accept the premise of that question. Number two, we put it back on it. What does that look like to you? Okay, so tell me, like when you say too Black, or you say, what would a Black person who's Christian first look like? What does that look like? And so this is always my issue with people like, oh, well, you know what? I'm Christian first. I'm not Black. So what do those things look like because what you're saying here is you're saying I can see the difference.
Yeah.
So you're literally being taught to look at external things because I can see your heart. I can see your mind. I can see what you're processing. I don't even see what you believe. But so now you're telling me I can judge externally what you're looking like. I can judge externally what happens here. And that sounds a little problematic.
Well, because here's where we get to the crux of it. We're talking about the question behind the question. Let's look at the assumption behind the statement is that for some people, for way too many people, in practical terms, redemption doesn't mean becoming more like Jesus. Redemption means becoming more white. That's what people are really getting at. So if you ask them, what's the difference between a too Black Christian and a Christian who's the right amount of Black?
It's whoever's closest to whiteness.
Wow. Watch out.
Whoa.
So,
Whoa.
That's the assumption.